Once upon a time, a rich king had three beautiful daughters. About his castle was a wonderful orchard in which all kinds of trees grew. The king had given warning that whoever should pluck and eat an apple from a certain tree would disappear 100 feet into the ground. When autumn came, the apples on his tree looked so red and juicy that the three princesses longed to taste them. Every day they went to the tree to see if any of the fruit had fallen, but the wind blew none down, and the princesses dared not pluck any because of the king's warning. One day the youngest of the three daughters said to her sisters, "Our father loves us so much that he will never cause us to disappear underground. He meant that warning only for strangers." So she plucked an apple. The other two sisters shared it with her, but as soon as they had eaten it, all three sank below the earth. By and by the king sent for his daughters, but they were nowhere to be found. At length, when his servants had searched the palace and grounds and could find no trace of them, the king had it proclaimed throughout the country that whoever should bring back a princess could take her as a bride. Thereupon, great numbers of young men set out in search of the royal maidens. Among others, there went out three huntsmen who were brothers. After traveling for 8 days, they came to a large castle in which every room was splendidly furnished. In one room, they found a large table and all manner of delicious food. Every dish was steaming hot and seemed fresh from the kitchen. Yet nowhere did they see or hear anyone. Since no one came, they ate what they liked. Afterward, they agreed that one of them should remain in the castle each day to take his ease, while the others two sought out the princesses. To decide who would stay, they drew lots, and it fell to the share of the eldest to stay in the castle the first day. About noon, a little dwarf brought in a roast meat, which he cut into pieces. While he held some out for the huntsman, he let one piece fall, and the dwarf asked the eldest brother to pick it up. "Pick it up yourself," said the eldest brother rudely. The dwarf did so, and as he bent over, the brother kicked him, saying, "That will teach you who is servant and who is master." The next day, the second huntsman remained at the castle, and the dwarf dropped the meat as before. The second huntsman was as rude as his brother, and the dwarf went away, shaking his fist. The third day, youngest brother remained, and the dwarf dropped the meat as usual and asked the youth to pick it up. "Gladly," said the youth, "for you have given us such fine service." And as he leaned over to do so, whereupon the little dwarf served him a meal twice as fine as he'd ever served before. Then the dwarf said, "You have done me a favor. Now I'll do you one. I will tell you where to find the king's daughters." The little man explained that he was an underground dwarf and that there were more than 1,000 like him. He also warned the huntsman that his two eldest brothers would try to trick him. Therefore, if he wanted to get the princesses, he must go alone. He must take with him his hunting knife and a great basket in which to let himself down into a well where the princesses were kept. In this well, he would find three rooms. In each of these was a princess guarded by a dragon. Each dragon had many heads and could be killed only by having the heads cut off. As soon as the dwarf had said all this, he disappeared. In the evening, the two older brothers returned and asked the youngest how he had passed his time. "Oh, very well indeed," he replied. "At noon, a dwarf came in and told me how to find the princesses. They are in a well on the top of the hill." The older brothers didn't believe him, but they thought they might as well search one place as another. So the next morning, all three brothers went up to the hill to the well. They drew lots to see who would descend into the well first. The lot fell before as to the eldest. He went down, taking a bell with him to ring as a signal when he wanted to come up again. Excuse me. As soon as he caught a glimpse of the dragon, this eldest brother rang the bell furiously. When he was drawn up, the second brother took his place and went down, and he quickly rang the bell to be pulled up. The youngest brother came next. The youngest brother came next. He allowed himself to be let down to the bottom of the well, and there, getting out of the basket, he marched boldly up to the first door with his drawn knife in hand. Inside, he heard a dragon snoring loudly. Carefully opening the door, he saw a princess sitting within. The sleeping dragon lay with his 9 heads on her lap. Quickly, the young huntsman raised his knife and cut off the 9 heads. Immediately, the princess jumped up and kissed him and gave him her golden necklace for a reward. Next, he found the second princess, who had a 7-headed dragon by her side. The young huntsman killed this beast as well, and then went on to the youngest. She was guarded by a 4-headed dragon, and he destroyed it as he had the others. The three sisters embraced and kissed him until he thought he would be smothered. So he rang the bell very loudly to signal he was ready to come up. When the basket came down, he put each princess in and then let them be drawn up. As the basket descended for him, he remembered the dwarf's warning that his brothers would try to trick him. So he picked up a huge stone and put it in the basket instead of getting in himself. Just as his brothers had drawn it halfway up, they cut the cord at the top, and the basket with the stone clattered to the bottom. The two huntsmen thought they had rid themselves of their youngest brother, and they threatened to kill the three princesses unless they promised never to tell their father, who truly rescued them. Then they went to the king and demanded the two eldest princesses for their wives. Meanwhile, the youngest brother was wandering sadly underground and thought he would die there. All at once he saw a flute on the wall. Ah me, he thought to himself, what good can this be here? No one could be happy enough to sing or dance in this place. Up and down, to and fro he walked until the floor was worn smooth. At last he decided to make the best of things, so he took the flute and blew 3 notes on it. Instantly 3 dwarfs appeared. He blew a little longer, and each note brought another dwarf, until the last room was quite filled with the little men. They all asked what he wished, and he told them he wanted to go up to the earth again. Immediately each dwarf seized a hair on the young huntsman's head, and they flew him up until he landed at the edge of the well. As soon as he was safe again, as he was safe on his legs again, he set out for the royal palace and arrived there just as the wedding for the princesses was about to be celebrated. He hurried up to the room where the king sat with his 3 daughters, and they were so overcome with the sight of him that they fainted away. Immediately the king ordered the newcomer to be put in prison, for he thought the young huntsman was surely done the princesses some sort of injury. As soon as the princesses had recovered, they begged their father to free the youth. He asked them the reason, and they wept bitterly and said they had promised not to tell. Well then, said the king, who suspected some evil trickery, tell the oven. You didn't promise anything about that. They slipped outside and listened to the keyhole while the youngest princess told the oven the story. When the king heard the truth, he ordered the 2 wicked brothers to be hanged, and he gave the youngest daughter in marriage to the princess's true rescuer.